All right, we're gonna go ahead and just get started. So today's presentation is about key exercises for maintaining rowing health. Let me get my slow slide up here. So this is me. This is probably Jen and I were out on the river down by the city. As you can see, it's really wavy. You know how when you get down there, the weather's always like kind of iffy, but you're like, oh, the skyline's beautiful. So I'm from Rochester. I'm a physical therapist. My little rowing origin story would be that I went to the University of Buffalo, and like the first week of school, there's some lovely ladies who said, come to this crew meeting, and I was like, oh, I want to go. But one of my friends from the opposite campus was there on North Campus, so I was going to see her, put my name on a list, and that was the end of it. That was like 25 years ago or so. So I've been rowing ever since. I got my physical therapy bachelor's at UB. At that time, you didn't necessarily need your doctorate. They were only doing masters. So then in 2006, I got my doctorate at Boston University. So I've been a physical therapist ever since. I've been coaching. I was coaching way back when Fairport was rowing out of Bruce Wick's backyard. I was one of the first coaches they had when they were doing that, way before the boathouse was built. And then I moved to Buffalo. I got married. I coached while I was in Buffalo. I coached for Narden for a couple of years. And then I got pregnant. And then I saw this lady out there with like a kid on one of those strapped on like kind of things on the dock, launching her team. And I was like, no, that's not going to be me. So I took about 9 years off from coaching. I have 4 kids total. And then I got back into rowing when I was at my son's school. One of the teacher's aides had a picture of a crew boat, and I was like, oh, that's fantastic, I used to row. She's like, oh, really? And I was like, yeah, I used to coach. She's like, oh, really? So then from there, I was helping out Mercy for a little bit, and I was assistant, and then I was head coach for about a year and a half until my kids got big enough to the point where I was running from races to try to get to their events and missing them. So I had to kind of take a step back. And then, of course, the pandemic happened, and then I thought to myself, I should combine these two things, rowing and physical therapy. So now I'm a proud owner of my own physical therapy practice, rowing on the square. So then my focus is rowers. So I'm looking to help rowers as best I can, and that's why I'm here doing this workshop. And Denny has been so gracious to get me connected with everyone, and then also he's been helping me with a boat for me and Jen that is broken. It's in my backyard right now. I'm trying to figure out epoxy and resin repair.
But it's our boat.
Yes.
That's great.
So in the last presentation, we talked about how there's a sequence to how we build our strength. So the developmental sequence, when babies are small, they start out super flexed, and then they have to do all these movements through reflex that teach them how to extend their bodies. So they go from being completely flexed to the point where they can roll onto their bellies, and then they push up, and then they get on their knees, then they are walking around. And this whole process takes a whole year to balance the muscles on the front of the body versus the muscles on the back of the body. So when I kind of took out that idea, I said, what are the bricks in the rowing wall? What are those key things that you need to maintain, that we need to do exercises for on a regular basis in order to keep our bodies moving well while we're rowing? First thing I like to talk about is ankle range of motion. Our ankles have full range. They're a mobility joint, as I like to say, and the actual lifting up of the toes, the dorsiflexion, as we call it, is really important to rowing. In rowing, you need about 35 to 40 degrees of dorsiflexion. Normal dorsiflexion, if you're a person walking around on the earth, just doing your own thing, 20 degrees of dorsiflexion. So we're calling for more range of motion than you actually need just to function as a human being. So that's one thing that rowing is testing us on. How much can we bend that ankle up? Next thing would be our knee stability. Knee stability happens because of the strength through the hip. The hip is a mobility joint. It moves all around. If you try to do that with your knee, and you do it enough, the knee will start to hurt. So you have to have balance of the abductors, which are the muscles on the side, and the adductors, which are the muscles on the inside of the thigh, in order to create that stability through the knee. Another thing about stability through the knee is also the ankle positioning. If the ankle is lacking range of motion, the knee might try to go out or in to make up for the lack of range of motion that you have. So it's really it's a balanced teeter-totter system, with the knee being the center of the teeter-totter, and ankle range of motion and hip strength being the other side of it. If they equal out, the knee stays happy. If it doesn't, then you're going to get some type of twisting or turning as you're coming up to the catch that might lead to knee pain or stress. The next brick in the wall is hip hinge. So what's unique about rowing is that we're calling on the body to have a mobile pelvis on a stable hip, so that's your hip hinge. And then we ask ourselves to come up the slide, which is the mobile hip on the stable pelvis. And those motions are neurologically independent, meaning that the muscle coordination has to be right on point in order for you to fluidly use that motion. Because the body, if you're doing a task that you've never done before, you're going to use all the muscles you've ever could put together for that motion. If you've ever played golf or attempted to start playing golf, your swing can be very all or nothing. You're moving every muscle to try to get at the ball. Whereas it's actually the breaking down of those individual muscles and moving slowly through them that gives you that soft flow movement. Same thing for rowing. We need to make sure that we're breaking those movements down, and that's why the hip hinge is so important. Being able to hinge and then also move the hip joint inside that stable pelvis.
Let's say about neurologically, they're independent.
They're, it's two separate movements. Yeah, so it's like the mapping in the brain on those movements are in two separate spots. And so when you're learning the motion, the natural tendency of the body is like, oh, this is a flexion movement. Let's just flex everything. You've seen someone who's trying to learn how to get on the erg, and they'll kind of do one of these where the body is back, and so your body's assuming, oh, flexion. I'm just doing the flexion, but you have to keep extended, flex, and then flex. And learning that neurological pattern can be difficult. And practicing the hip hinge independent of the stable pelvis and the hip movement can help you get that patterning just in the right timing. Proper hamstring length, we're all aware of that. So if your hamstrings are tight, doing the hip hinge can be difficult. The one thing that's great about rowing is that because our feet tend to be a little bit below the deck of the boat, we get a little bit of bend in the knee. So we get a little bit of what I call cheat out, so that you don't have to try to hip hinge over a very straight leg, because that will call on a lot of hamstring tension. So, and then the next thing is extensor sequencing. So when we're in the boat, we want to try to push with our legs. Most people have a real easy time activating the quad muscles, the muscles on the front of the leg. It's kind of a natural movement, something that we tend to use quite a bit. In general, people have the harder time with coordinating glute activation. Some people, everybody can give this a try. So you're sitting, and I want you to squeeze your butt. So you feel yourself kind of come up off the chair. And that's your glute activation. So what's happening in the boat is we're trying to push the leg and activate the glute and the quad at the same time to give that solid push. If you can't activate your glute effectively, what happens is it's all quad. And as you're using that quad, you'll want to extend and open. You're not going to be able to maintain the upper body over the flexed lower extremities. So glute activation, teaching people how to use their glutes is very helpful. With people who are learning how to row, we talked about this in the last workshop. If you lower the feet, it gives you a more quad dominant type of drive, which can get people started, but eventually you need to add the glutes in and make sure you're activating them in that full compressed position. And that's what's difficult. And in the full compressed position, the glutes are stretched. Your whole, what we call the posterior chain of your body is stretched. And if you're reaching out, you're pulling through all of the extension fascia in the back of the body. And then to call on a muscle to activate that isn't woken up and ready to activate, you're going to find it pretty difficult to do. More bricks. So everyone knows about core stability, but everybody talks about that. You see someone out rowing and they're either slumped over, they're dumping at the finish doing one of these. They get up to the catch and they're just, instead of upright and flexed together, they're kind of rolled over the top of the legs. So there is a touch of lumbar stability that has to be there. Our lumbar spine is not made to flex repetitively with each stroke. We want to make sure that the pelvis is coming over plenty during that hip hinge. So as that ball and socket starts to come into the flexion, the hamstrings don't start to pull the pelvis under and cause that low lumbar flexion and the low back pain that people can feel when they're driving hard through the catch and they feel the stress going through their low back. So that's for our lumbar stability. Another thing to think about is the external obliques and the fact that they need to co-contract. So our external obliques are kind of like our, you do, your side movements here, like you think external obliques. But when they contract together, they stabilize the trunk. So as you do your hip hinge, those external obliques are creating that co-contraction to keep you upright. So if they're not strong, that's when you can see a little bit of problem with core stability. A lot of people like to do like side planks to try to address that, to make sure that each side is activating the way it should. The next part of core stability, because core really is, everything from like shoulders within through here and then down through the hips. It's the whole trunk activating. So thoracic extension and rotation, we're talking about that upper back area, the part where you see people kind of punched over, that's like the thoracic spine. If you're working on that type of punched position, the first thing to do is to work on extension. The first thing to do is to work on your rotation. So as you're reaching and rotating, you're loosening up that thoracic spine, because there is a good deal of rotation in that spine, especially if you're a sweep rower. You want to be able to use that rotation rather than torquing the low back. So as you work on your rotation, also working on that extension. A great way to work on thoracic extension is when you're like sitting in a dining chair that has a back to it. This would be that one might be high. And you can kind of feel it like hit right around that thoracic spine, and you just kind of reach over it and encourage that upper back to extend. We spend so much time down here, right here, that thoracic extension is very important for keeping the body upright. Next, on the bricks in the rolling wall, on the scapula and the shoulder complex. So your scapula or your shoulder blades on your back, they are they have a couple, like a force couple that they create with the shoulder. So it means that the shoulder and the scapula are friends. They hang out together. That ball of your shoulder is rotating on that scapula. That's actually the cup of the shoulder. And what happens is there's almost like a symphony of muscles that activate and turn on and turn off. You have your lower traps, your mid traps, your uppers, and then in between your shoulder blades, you have what are called your rhomboids. You have your levator scapula. There's a lot of different muscles, the serratus anterior, which most people who are rowers have heard of before. It's like like I said, like a symphony. Every muscle in that setup has to do its job, whether it's rotating the scapula down so the arm can move. And the scapula moves to accommodate the position of the shoulder. So if you lose that force coupling, say you've got some weakness, you're holding your shoulders up here, eventually the shoulder won't move the way it should. And that repetitive positioning of the shoulder that's not appropriate for the scapula will then cause that shoulder to hurt. So the reason I like for it to be a part of the rowing wall is because of the stabilization you have to do when you get to the touch. Whether that shoulder comes out of the socket as you're driving, or whether it's stayed and stabilized in, so the shoulder blades are kind of back and a little bit down, and it has like a solid surface to push from, or if the shoulder blades are up and the oar handle is pulling that shoulder out of the joint because the weakness in the muscles and the force coupling imbalance that you may have. One note about the serratus anterior, that's what people talk a lot about rib injuries in rowing. That's those micro tears that can happen within the, what we call the intercostals. So it's the muscles that are in between the ribs. They're very little, they're positional, and the serratus anterior actually attaches through the ribs also. So you get these, like this micro tearing because the serratus kind of sits on the edge of the shoulder blade towards the middle and then wraps around your ribs. And it creates like this stabilization, kind of holds the whole structure together. And as we're rowing, if you don't have the right force coupling, that pull can create a tension within the ribs, and then people develop the rib fractures or rib stress fractures. The last part of the bricks in the wall will be the cervical spine. We talk about the neck being neutral. And the neck being in the neutral position is part of posture. You know, I have a very like forward head. My shoulders are very forward. Still working on my posture. But if your shoulders are forward, the head's going to be forward, and you're going to get more cervical extension than you should. Then if you bring the shoulders down, bring the scapula back, bring the shoulders in, and then tuck the chin, you can get your spine into that neutral position. And so you don't want to be the rower who's extending out. We've seen the people who get up to the catch, the chin comes up, they come back to the finish, the chin comes down. You want to try to keep that neutral spine. And a lot of times, I mentioned before, the posterior chain, when you get all the way up to the catch, you know, the fascia in our body connects all the way from the top of our heads down all the way underneath the toes. You're like saran wrapped in fascia. Even though we like to think of each muscle being its own individual friend, you know, when they do dissections, they can pull on a muscle in the upper body, and you can see the result of that pull down in the lower body. So we're very connected. When we get into that rowing catch position, we are putting a lot of tension on the posterior chain. If you don't have a lot of stretch back there, this is the position of your neck because of the pull from that chain. So you get up there and you got to extend the neck because you just don't have enough of that connective tissue to cover all that distance. So 3 main exercises to consider. We'll talk about ankle range of motion, we'll talk about the squat, and we'll talk about the hip hinge. So for ankle range of motion, we're all going to test our ankle range of motion here. So we can find a little piece of wall, and what we're going to do is you're going to go about 4 inches away from the wall, and then you're going to bring your knee to the wall, keeping your heel in contact with the floor. If you can't do that, bring the foot forward and then start from there. Do about 5 or 6 repetitions. If you think you can go a little bit further back, go ahead and move back. If you need to hold on to the wall on the other side, you can give that a try.
4 inches is suffice.
4 inches from the wall, from the toe. And then you want to try to just rest that knee against the wall. If you can get to the wall and your toes about 4 inches back, you have pretty decent heel range of motion. And so this is a little stretch. It can also be an exercise. Everybody can kind of give that a try. Heel has to stay down, yeah. And so this is something that you can do in the morning, or you can do it before your row. just to kind of loosen up that heel range of motion. Again, that's that movement that we need in order to put our feet to the foot stretchers evenly.
I have a weak right knee, and so I noticed that I don't have the same range of motion in that ankle. because of it.
Yep. And that would be something that you'd want to work on as far as strengthening. And then
Yeah.
the wall test would be a little test of how much more range of motion have you gotten? Are you able to get 3 inches back? Are you able to get 4
Yeah.
inches back?
It's-
So you can kind of monitor your progress. Kind of try to. I have another one that I like to do. And this one's with a foam roller. If you're in the market for a foam roller, I like the long ones. They're really great because you can lie on them and you can do all sorts of things with them. So the other thing that I'll show you some when we get to the deadlift portion. I'll show you how to do some of those. So what we're going to do is just, again, an ankle range of motion stretch. So you're going to come straight to the foam roller. So we're stretching it in the normal plane of movement. But then we can come out to the side and stretch those structures. And we can come to the other side and stretch those structures. And then you can also do just a static stretch to your foam roller. So it acts as a nice little bowl for you to use in order to do your ankle stretching.
Is it still about the 4 inches?
About the 4 inches away, and you can start moving it a little bit further as you're feeling that you're getting stronger. And then there's the typical stretch for the ankle where you use a strap. So this would just be sitting down and working on your dorsiflexion stretch. Just bring that foot back, hold for 15 to 20 seconds, and relax. And hold. So just a little bit of ankle motion. So the next activity is the squat. Everybody loves the squat. Everybody thinks the squat's important. Everybody wants to learn how to squat well. The key components of the squat are the ankle, hip, and trunk range of motion, having the right combination of that motion in order to be able to squat down efficiently. So the keys to squatting are actually about your proportions. It has nothing to do with strength. Where you're feeling your squat has more to say about your proportions than necessarily about your technique. So the position of your knee is going to be controlled by how much ankle dorsiflexion or toe up that you have. So I consider myself one of these people who has kind of a longer lower half, kind of a mid to short size femur, and kind of in comparison, maybe a little bit longer upper body. So I can sit and fold pretty easily. And when your proportions are at that point, then you can get into pretty deep squats. Now you saw when I got really deep, I tipped back. So when you have a short femur, or when you have a short tibia, so that this bone here, and your femur is long, and your trunk is short, you're gonna be forward. You're gonna feel this in your low back, because the more your trunk has to come forward, more perpendicular your trunk is to the ground, the more it's here instead of here. So as you squat, you might be a person who does better with in the cage and a stabilized squat, leaning against the bar and being able to kind of sit and come up, rather than someone who's doing a free squat where you have to keep your trunk up to get down and then back up. So a lot of it has to do with your limb length, how your body's proportioned, and that's going to kind of dictate how comfortable you are with squatting. Some people, when they fold up, their upper body, the upper part of their trunk is so large in the fold that their center of gravity is behind them. So that, like I was saying, that's a person with a long, like, leg bone. Because think about it, the hip has to go, the hip would be back here, And as you squat, you lose your balance. So that might be a person who only squats about here and says, that's it, I can't do any more than that. If I pull down here, I'm gonna tip over. So knowing your squat pattern will really help you to manage, to know, I can't squat all the way down. That's fine. So then you might squat to a box. That might be the exercise that you do. Or you might use a dumbbell up on a box and you're doing your little mini squats. That's just as effective as getting all the way down and all the way up with the big barbell. You have to use the proportions that you have and the strength that you have to really train your body. We want to practice some squats just here at our seats and see if we can do some.
So is the proportion between the femur and the tibia the same as the arms too? Like if I have no long arms, just
And that will also kind of, that can act almost as a counterbalance when you're coming down into your squat, because you'll have the ability to get some of the weight more forward. Yep. And then you can try to squat to seat. Like, so if there's a seat behind you, see if you can get to the seat. So if you happen to go and sit down on it, it's no big deal. There you go. Nice.
Isn't the rule your knees aren't supposed to go ahead of your toes?
Yeah, and then if you follow that, and this part of your body is longer proportionally, you're going to feel like you're going to tip back. So to protect the knees, people always say try to keep the knee over the toe. However, depending on your ankle range of motion and the length of your actual limbs, you may not be able to do that. So very nice. So adding a squat to your daily activity is great. Adding it in the morning, you do your ankle stretch, you do your little squats, even just the mini squats. And as you're coming up, make sure you're squeezing the glutes and pushing the quads, because that's what we do when we're rowing. So make sure we're giving that squeeze as we're going up, and then letting those muscles lengthen and then squeeze as on the way up.
Oh, sure. I'm going to go back to the ankle thing. What we were doing up against the wall, I really noticed that on calf. So how many should we do? What do you suggest? Like 10 each side? 15,
Yeah,
20?
in the morning, I would do a calf stretch, and maybe it's 10 to 15 or 15 to 20 seconds, and you repeat it 2 to 3 times.
Okay.
Just enough to kind of, get a little bit of lengthening going on. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's natural for us to tighten up, because usually we're sitting in like kind of like that flex position in ankle neutral. So we're not getting into that toe up type of position on a regular basis. Hip hinge. I was supposed to bring dowels and I didn't bring them with me. I had a bunch that I was gonna bring.
Or is it?
A dowel. So like
Lots of brooms.
broomsticks or
Tons of brooms.
anything like that would work for you. So you can see our person in our first diagram up here. So we'll put one hand by the neck. If they have the hand above, I like to put it in the crease of the neck, just so that I can kind of feel with my fingers where my head is. You try to stand up nice and tall. Other hand is into low back. So that's where we are. Bend the knees just a little bit, and then we hinge. And you're trying to maintain the contact as you're doing this motion. So this, the contact with the stick.
Oh, that's.
So you don't want your lower body to come back, or you don't want the stick to do this.
Got it.
You want to try to maintain that neutral spine and hinge and back. And again, this is to work on activating that hip hinge. So as you come out of the finish, you're swinging forward with that movement that doesn't equal seat movement. When you hip hinge, there's a moment in the boat where the seat is stationary. And when you do it right, the boat, it's actually one of the fastest moments in the boat, because it's a transfer of your weight from the finish and then towards the stern. When you do it right, boats that are crossing the line, if you cross the line out of the finish, you actually get a surge of speed, because especially in an 8, it's all that body weight coming back and then coming forward, and the coming forward, even though it's towards the stern, it's positive direction momentum for the boat. So actually those boats surge at the finish line compared to people who are working through the drive. And that's why it's so key to swing efficiently so that your boat can run. When you really get into that happy spot, you come out of the finish and then the boat's like singing, and then it's gently pulling you up towards the crash. Does anyone want to try some of the dowel?
Okay, so here.
So
Yeah.
to have, oh, sorry, you're turning this, yeah.
This
That
one.
one, yeah, there you go.
Is that it?
Yeah, you got it. And try to stay in contact,
So
and then just
what I-
bend. Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, you have a great hip hinge. That's amazing. Very nice.
Big fake hips.
Very, very nice. And I'm a physical therapist. I geek out on no. Very nice, very nice. Good long hand.
Yeah, okay, buddy. There you go. So, it's like-
Yep, you got
Wait,
it.
so what's the thing again?
Hi, how are you?
Yep, there you go. Yep.
And then
You want
have
to
to
keep
stay
in
on
contact,
that.
yep, and then hinge forward and then back up. And you can put a little bit of a bend in your knee just to take a little bit of the stress off of. There you go, you got it. Try to keep that hand, the lower hand in contact. I don't.
That hurts.
Yeah. Very nice. Yep. You don't necessarily need to stretch unless you want to enjoy a nice stretch the other way for the other arm. And so this is a great exercise to add to your morning routine. This is a nice little mobility stretch. It's a good hamstring stretch. It's good neurologically for the hips to be practicing that pelvis over.
Shoulders.
I'll talk about shoulders at one point. I'll give you some good ones for the shoulders.
My shoulders killing me.
Okay, okay. Then try without the towel. Oh, I'll take this off.
Yeah.
Towel, and then you can try either just hands across chest, a little bit of bend in the knees, and then pivot right from the hips. And if you feel that, once you feel this crunch in your hamstring, stop, and then come back up. And try to keep it just solid, straight, beautiful. You got it?
Got a lot of mass to move. Got a lot.
Oh,
I'm
you're
moving for two.
very nice. The good isolation, it's hard to get those muscles to really think, okay, just move this. And that's what you're trying to concentrate on when you're doing these little exercises in the morning. Isolate that stretch in the back. Do your squats. Get your hip hinge in. Those are all exercises that will keep you healthy and keep you rowing.
What about when you're bending over? I know, and your feet supposed to be like this, I know.
It all depends on the way that your hips.
Look at my knee.
So some people are more turned out, and then some people are more turned in. I'm actually I'm a little bit straight on this side, and this hip feels a little bit better this way rather than straight on right there. You want to try to maintain a relatively neutral position to both sides. There you go. A little bit underneath. Yep, that'll just protect the hamstrings so you're not really stretching too far. The goal, because we're rowers and the feet are very tight together, the goal would be to try to get your feet closer and closer together as you're working on your hip hinge, and then also on your squat, so that you're able.
I heard that.
Has been talking to me for the last month, and I've been taking care of her, and she's going to be just fine. But she's been creeping and I have my right hip is very tight, and when I don't do my morning hip stretches after I run, it'll make that noise all day long. The other hip hinge activity you can do is the good morning. So hands apart or feet apart, and then you're just doing the same idea. So it's just kind of a movement up from doing just the dowel. The dowel gives you that cue to stay up nice and tall. Once you feel like you're really staying up nice and tall, you go ahead and put the hands behind your head and do it as a good morning. So that's the name of that exercise. Down here, we have the deadlifts. So you can see there's a progression here that this person's using. They're using the hip hinge with the dowel, and then they have the kettlebell up on weight. So the deadlift isn't as low. So imagine the bell being a little bit higher, and then you'll be able to lift and not have to bend over as much. And then they go ahead and put the kettlebell on the floor. Then they use the track bar. So if you're at a gym that has the track bar, really nice way to practice your deadlifts, because then the bar's here rather than in front. In front gets to be difficult. You can see how this friend, it's not until like the fifth progression that they're putting the bar on the floor and they're trying to lift from there. And then the final progression would be elevate the feet, lower the bar, and you're picking up from even lower. The deadlift is a great activity because it really kind of mimics what we do at the couch. You know, we're driving with those legs and then hinging up. So a lot of teams practice deadlifts, especially in the spring, heavy deadlifts. You do maybe 3 or 4 of them, kind of like the start sequence in the spring races. So that's how the deadlift can be used. If you're getting fancy and you want to get into like some single leg deadlifts, I love this foam roller for this reason, because then it keeps the leg in a nice position so that your leg isn't, you're kind of not going out to the side. You can keep everything straight, touch, and come back up. And you can practice that. So the progression after that, after you start getting into the kettlebell and you're doing the lift, you could start doing some just foam roller single leg deadlifts. And what that will do, it'll start to work on the hip and the strength around the hip, the control of the hip. Really, really great activity. So there's a full list of exercises. That is a QR code. I have the list of exercises up here, and I can get everybody a copy of that so that you can get the full list. So on the full list, I added in a couple other things. I added like a bridge. Most people do some type of bridge to help with the glute activation. I have a couple other exercises, like the dead bug. Is everybody familiar?
Is it like the yoga one where you're
Yeah,
lying
that's,
and your legs like
yeah, the dead bug,
baby?
yeah.
So
So,
Gabby baby, is it like Gabby baby? No.
whoops, I'm like, it's too late for days. So,
Oh,
dead bugs, working on that alternating side strength.
do that again. I mean, I'm not. Okay, so the knee is back. The knee is
And you can do it with many variations. You can do leg extend, you can do leg all the way up, you can do,
But it's opposite.
but it's opposite, because you're working on the cross strength of the.
Are you gonna put some of those on your website eventually and on like your?
Yeah, yeah, so-
Go back from.
Yeah, the when you do the QR code, it'll give you access to a list of exercises like a PT exercise list. So there's instructions, and then there's ideas, like, I just left it 7 days a week, 3 times a day, 10 repetitions, 3 sets of 10, just very, very general. You don't need to do them that much. If you're doing, whatever you're doing your workout, I would take maybe 3 of these exercises, or 4 of these exercises. Like, you don't have to go crazy in order to really, to strengthen. You just have to have a little bit of consistency. So you might say on Monday I do the first page. You know, if I work out again on Wednesday, I'll do the second page. And if I work out again on Friday, I'll do the Friday page. You can kind of add in the exercises that you really think that you may need, or feel like, wow, this really is making a difference. I really need to work on my core. So you might do the dead bugs, the alternating heel taps, the Pavlov press. Hopefully that QR code will work. It should.
I got it from across the room.
Oh,
And have you installed MedBridge Go?
yeah, that's my my home exercise center. But if you install it,
I did.
yep, and then you just click on it, you'll be able to access it. And don't forget necessarily what makes you put in any information. You can just click on it, and then you'll have access to the exercises. So there's a bunch of different exercises, and Scapular wall slide, because we're just talking about shoulders. So let me start with snow angels. Let's go down there first. So for shoulders, shoulders get so tight. So snow angels are just maintaining contact with the floor and keeping the hands on the floor, and then trying to get all the way up, and you can see how tight my shoulders are. Just look at my low back, it's coming off the floor. Right about there is about too much for me. And then back down. So this is your snow angel. If you get fancy, snow angels get easy. You can also do these standing up against the wall. And you can do it as like a scapular slide. So hands against here, heels back, reaching all the way up, and about here, I can feel the tightness in my shoulders already.
Those are hard.
And about there, that's quite a bit of stretch and strength at the same time, because I'm maintaining keeping those shoulders back. If I was being really good, I'd tuck this little tummy into and stabilize, and then bring those hands up and down. So not only a stretch, but also strengthening for those posture muscles at the same time. Snow angels on the foam roller. This is one of my favorites. So this is why the long foam roller is your first. You can lie on it nice and comfortable. You can do your plain snow angels. And when you're doing your snow angels, palms up towards the ceiling, and it's just our anatomy. You have to turn palms up so that your shoulder can move properly. Otherwise, the shoulder joint's not turned out. And you'll get a little bit of, see, with palms down, like stiffness to there, palms up. You see how tight I am, sorry. Also, a great one is goal post. So just hanging out here in goal post. You can do that one. Also a little bit of rotation and open. There's a lot of really great stuff you can do with the foam roller. And if you don't have the foam roller, you can imagine me lying on the side of my bed and not moving this arm, and then letting this arm kind of hang off the edge of the bed. And I could get my snow angels going that way. I could do my goal post here.
You could roll up a yoga mat.
You could roll up a yoga mat, that would, anything that kind of gets you up off the ground. Also, one of my favorites is the letter T. You know, you get sitting here, you just kind of just let that stretch go. Letter T, letter Y, a letter I. See how I try. And the key to those would be to also, activate the stomach muscles so that you can keep the back nice and flat. Because you can cheat some of those motions out, as you probably saw. My low back is coming off the foam roller just a little bit as I got into those extremes of range, because I'm not doing my angels as often as I should. But we get tight. We get tight because we're using phones, typing on computers. It's just something that happens over time. Thoracic extension and rotation. So this one. So the easiest way to do this one is to get kind of in child's pose. If this bothers your knees, you can also do it in hands and knees, and I'll show you how to do that too. So you squat down here, kind of get right into your child's pose, get your hand behind the neck, and this is rotation, thoracic rotation. You can see how there's not a lot of rotation in that tight. But you can also do that on both sides. And then there's another one that I really, really love. Where you come down flat, you bring one leg over, bring this hand out, that hand out here. You rotate, touch that hand all the way across, and stretch. You can do a couple repetitions of this, or you can just hold in this position. Like I said, all the exercises are written on the sheet, and you can always email me, say, Adrien, I don't understand this one. Or if you're able to load them up, there are little videos. So just click on the little video and the little person will show you how the exercise is to be done.
So much of this we didn't know that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
I did get out around if anybody wants to try it.
One of the other exercises is the serratus anterior. And the best way to activate the serratus is in standing, and then you can do wall slides. You can do the same thing on a like therapy ball, rolling out. The other thing you can do,
On your knees, the therapy level?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep. The other thing you can do is if you've got, let me see if I can find my bands. Now I really love, I don't know if anybody's got these fabric
I don't know what
ones.
to do with it.
Oh my gosh, these fabric ones are awesome. So because we're rowers and you got your rowing machine, you can do banded row as part of your warm up. And it's a little bit of strengthening kind of built into your warm up. So what you would do, I love the fabric ones because they don't roll. I used to use the other ones, they used to roll, it was awful. So you put it like around the calves and then you just go through your rowing motion. Do that for 2 or 3 minutes. What that will make you do is stabilize the knees and stabilize the ankles. So you'll start to feel it in your calves because your calf muscles are doing some micro movements to keep you in that neutral position. The next thing you do is you take the band and you put it around the thighs. And you go ahead and row for a couple of minutes. And what you'll find is that your glutes will be on fire. Because what you're doing is you're abducting the legs a little bit. That's a major motion of the glute. And so as you're rowing here, you're going to be stabilizing the hip and asking the glute to work, and you'll feel it every single stroke. The last one you can do, this gets at the serratus anterior. So it's a little bit awkward. You need the right size band. So then you put your band here and you're doing your rowing. And you keep your arms straight. So it's like legs and body rowing. But just the push against the band is activating those shoulder blades. If you're really smart about it, you activate and then drop them down. You try to row and keep them there. Ooh,
Yeah.
that's
Is there a certain brand that?
This one's just whatever the cheapest one was on Amazon.
What is it?
I love these.
I got it at Marshall's and I didn't know what to do with it, so I put it in my garage sale box.
They stay on so nicely. Oh my goodness. So much better than,
Oh, no, mine's a cedar.
and there's kind of like a light, medium, and heavy.
Colors.
You can do all sorts of exercises with them. You can put the band on and you can do your bridges. You can use it to do like a Pavlov press if you've got, so I didn't review that with you guys. Do you guys know the Pavlov press? What that activity is? So, yeah, so.
What press?
Right. So putting a little bit of tension on the band and then bringing it in and bringing it out. I'm stabilizing with my trunk. You can do it in a deep squat. You could do it like in a half kneel. And what it does is it, because you're anti-rotating, like you're keeping your body stable, it stabilizes, it activates the full core. And so it's a really great exercise if you're looking for more core work.
Is that one a medium or light?
I think this one's a medium, but when I do my banded row, I usually use the light one. So I like to go for a couple minutes just to kind of do kind of endurance style strengthening with it, but
So
I love
what
the
would
band.
be the best? I know nothing about this band. So what would be
So-
the best to buy?
like a light, a medium, and a heavy.
They have 3
Is it a
different
set?
ones.
Yep, usually they come in a set, but if you're only buying one, I get the light. The light's great because it'll let you do, There's just so many exercises you can do with these. You can do your side steps.
I did that.
Get it?
You
Yeah,
can
that's a
do,
lot easier.
you can do a single leg. You can do hip extensions. You can do hip flexions. You can do like a hip flexion with a forward turn. So you can do a bunch of things with these. And because they stay in place now, because the old one used to run all up and down your body as you did stuff, so much easier to use. All right, let me see. So I wanted to chat a little bit about foam rollers and mobility aids. A lot of people have used the foam roller and like, oh, it hurts so good, and you want to, really push on those muscles. And I'm not really of that school of thought. I mean, the purpose of the foam roller is it's supposed to like be neurocalming. So it's supposed to relax the muscles so they can lengthen, or it's supposed to excite the muscles so they can work. So before you go out and row, you may want to do some foam rolling where you may go a little bit faster. So you might go back and forth, try to get all those muscles warmed up. Like that idea of, the athlete is kind of fisting other muscles to wake them up before the exercise. If the purpose is stretch, you want to relax those muscles after all the work you've done. It's slow. And you're trying to feel the stretching of the fascia. You're looking for those tender points. If I find a tender point, give it a nice slow roll. The one thing about sometimes there's tender points, and those are your nerves. You're compressing them. So you have to be careful, especially as you head into the back of the knee. A lot of nerves going on there. Side of the knee high, lots of nerves there. Also, people who like to roll like their IT band, that's lots of nerves, lots of neural tissue to this. That's gonna feel noxious. It's not gonna feel comfortable. Rolling the back of the thigh, moving the hamstrings. That's gonna be okay. Coming up on the butt. Get some of those deep butt muscles. If you rotate a little bit, you can do it this way. Also on the side. This way. So there's lots of really great ways to use a foam roller. I personally, this is my foam roller that I keep on my bed. This one's from Five and Below. I think it was $5. I like it because it's a little bit softer. So it's not as mean. You have to kind of play around and decide whether you're like one of these firm foam roller friends or whether you need something that's a little bit softer. I always like to think of foam rolling as kind of like the poor man's massage. So I like at the end of a workout or the end of the day, and I want to foam roll, I want to feel like I'm calming those muscles down. I want to feel like I'm lifting them. Another thing you can do is add movement to your foam roll. So as you're foam rolling, flexing and extending the ankle will change the feel. And so it depends on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to get the body ready, then before a row, you may use, I didn't bring I have like a stick. And you might do the stick before, underneath, and up here on the thigh, and under here. I did bring, my leg's almost too big for it, but it does feel nice on my arm. That's how I love mobility aids. I got a bunch of stuff like this. So there's this one.
So the chances of me, wait a minute, that'd be funny.
So, like I said, this is the poor man's massage. You're trying to lengthen those tissues out. spot right here. And then, but also be conscious of like the front of the calf, very bony. You don't want to roll over that. Like I was saying, the back of the knee, lots of neuro and vascular structures there. You don't want to do that. Side of the leg, you can do it, but it's not going to feel great because it's just vascular. Again, this doesn't feel so bad. You know, there's lots of muscles in the thigh. So let's take a little bit.
Did you get the calf without going over?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do it this way.
Oh.
So you can kind of play around. I'm gonna.
And what do you think of the question mark?
Oh,
I have that.
I have one. I didn't bring it. Oh, that's.
Okay.
That's
It's
one.
very frightening.
That's right.
Yeah.
Great, you can get everything, so.
Yeah.
I always feel like, am I doing this correctly?
You want to just gently press as you go. A lot of times I find like a little knot right through here, and then I press and hold. I take a nice deep breath in,
Press and hold.
and then press and hold. Blow it out, and then I kind of roll back and forth just a little bit. I'll take it, it's kind of got a little bar in it. I'll take it side to side. I'll find another little spot, and I'll press and hold. Breathe in. Breathe out.
I brought it to work and all the girls are like, yeah, this is great.
And there's so many different types of aids. Some people like the really hard, spiky ones. This type style. Somewhat like these are great for feet, like the plantar fascia of your foot. Yeah, that's this one too.
Hey, can I see the black one? No.
So for this type of one, you get right in there. Get right into the fascia, get into the attachments in the calves. Get that stretch in there. Some people like this for the hip. I'm not a fan. Like I don't need that type of thing. You want to decide what type of mobility person you are. You might enjoy like that really deep tension, that pinpoint style of pressure. Some people really like that. Not me. But I'm gonna leave a couple of these up here so you guys can try doing different things.
Just get something safe.
I got this one too, which is also kind of a little bit more pinpoint.
Okay.
You have someone who can do your back. They can get like up and down the erected spine right there on either side of your spine. You don't want to roll center, not on the spine. Bony prominences, so anything that sticks out bony is not going to be happy with this. You can also use that one on your arms. If you can figure out how to get your arm in, and then you can work it through to get both sides of the arm. That's a cool one. Isn't it? That's a fun one. Let's see.
This one's probably
And then this one is for the neck. Okay.
Probably not, I'm sorry.
So this one goes
Taking it over.
right behind the neck. And then here.
All right, so.
Yeah, and then you can kind of move down. And then I can tuck my chin and look up. And tuck my chin and look up. You can kind of, if I keep scooting down, I get a little bit more tension.
Yeah, you're accidentally.
Yeah, you can do like occipital. If you get in the right spot, actually do a little bit of massage.
Oh.
And this can work going down the spine also. So spine in the center of this, and you can actually work on like extension and flexion. So moving further down.
So
You can get at each level of your spine to extend and flex.
what would you do for, when I say flexibility, I'm sure it's partially a part of this, but from turning, constantly being single and turning. Right now, I'm in decent shape because, I've been in the water once.
Yeah.
So by the end of the season,
I would practice your chin pops. Like I would do a little routine against the wall, maybe just before you go out, and maybe do 4 or 5 chin tucks.
That, is that what you mean?
So the head, for the chin tuck, the head is sliding back.
Oh, yeah, I had a physical therapist tell me that was a stinky sock exercise. I said, well, I had some trouble with my neck, and he said,
Yep.
yeah, but I was going like this, trying to smell the sock. I was doing this thing. No, you don't.
So,
Put your
hand against the wall. And then just like a hand on your chin.
Hand on my chin.
And then bring the chin back, so the back of your head kind of presses into the wall.
Like
Not
that?
down,
Not
but
down.
back.
I don't know how to go any further back.
Try moving forward first. So
Okay, okay,
bring the head forward
okay. Oh, I see what you're saying.
and then slide it straight back, keeping your nose level. Is that?
Let's move my work.
Oh, crap.
That might be, it might be my car though. I can double check. Let me. My.
School.
That might be mine.
You got it? Yeah, so set it kind of underneath, like, you'll feel kind of like larger bones through here at the right butt, and then kind of tuck your chin. And then once you kind of get those, move your hips down towards your feet. a
Beth
little
is
bit.
on the floor.
So kind of sneak. Yep. Can you feel it? And
Oh,
then you can pump your ankles up and down, and then that can kind of.
Oh, my gosh.
And so neck muscles are positional muscles. They can get very sore very quickly.
Yeah.
So nice and gently and slow, just like a gentle rock, and that will slowly
Gentle
release the
cry.
head.
And what is that doing, Beth? Is that for your neck?
That is,
A little bit of a neck release. Sometimes
Yeah.
that really helps with if you have neck pain, neck tension, headaches too. Sometimes the tightness of those muscles behind the head will create headache problems. Forward. Yep. It's like it's like the walk like an Egyptian kind of like head movement. Yeah. Forward. Yeah, there you go. The other thing you'll want to try is just head against the wall and rotate.
Oh.
And try to look over your shoulder and then back towards the wall, especially for the turning that we do in the boat. I'm always weary about necks. Necks have a lot of structural, nerve, and vascular in them. So I try to I like the wall because it's neutral. It doesn't put an extra extension on the neck while you're trying to rotate. If you have yoga blocks, you can do foam roller.
there's some right there.
There's some it's foam blocks.
No, just.
Foam
She said,
roller,
"If you have yoga blocks, she's gonna do something."
one yoga block. And I always tell people be very, very gentle with your neck. Necks are not made for lots of
So-
movement.
Chiropractors that take it as they relax your head, and then they jerk your head, and it cracks.
So, yeah.
Not a
As
good
far
habit.
as manipulations, so, chiropractors are trained in a special type of manipulation. There's grades of manipulation going from 0 all the way to 5. They do 5, the level grade 5 of manipulation. So that's the actual joint cracking and snapping and trying to immediately grab all that information. As a physical therapist, we usually do grade 0 to 4. So what we do is we're trying to gently coax that joint back into its normal movement. So that's why, a chiropractor might take you out of here, get you the extension, and then take you through the motion in order to be that range of motion. And you want to make sure whoever you're having as your chiropractor, you really trust that they understand the technique of the manipulation. And when done properly, sometimes that's a great way for people to gain their range of motion back. But as a physical therapist, we try to move a little bit more slowly through bringing those joints back into their normal range of motion. So neck rotation, so on here, and when you're on here, you can kind of look down and past. And because you have the yoga block behind you, it's going to keep you from going into extra extension of the neck. And if at any point when you're doing rotations or side bending with rotations and you're getting lightheaded or you have any type of neurological symptoms like tingling, please stop. Because the way that our neck structures are created, there's nerves and there's the main vascularization for your brain runs through the vertebrae. And so when you're doing those motions, you can actually cut off the messages from either the vascular system or from the nerve system, and that might be why you're getting those symptoms. So if you have those symptoms, you need to let your doctor know so they can take a look at the structural setup and make sure there isn't anything that you need to be aware of, or like you need to just positioning might be off, so you might need to do some stretching so that you're not getting those symptoms. But as you're doing your rotations, just I always like go nice and easy. Be nice to your neck. Be nice to your body. Let me see. So questions? Does anybody have any like technical rowing things that they've been working on and they would like an exercise?
So what about the base of my thumbs? I mean, I didn't have this much pain the last time I was on the water, so it's not progressively worse over the past couple months over the winter, because I've seen a lot of writing. I'm really stressed out at work.
Yeah.
But technically, I don't think he used the base of it.
I think that joint is probably pretty stable during the rowing motion.
Because my hands are in the C position.
Yeah.
I want it to be.
And then as long as when you're feathering, you're using like the pull and flip kind of motion, and you're not using the actual wrist. So like, so you want, as you come out of the finish, you want to bring the handle into the front of the hand.
Yes, okay.
And so then it's a squeeze when you get to the catch. So it's the handle's here, and then as you come to the catch, you squeeze, wrist stays straight. I don't know if the thumb action would be, but concentrate on bringing that handle into the front of the hand. If that motion doesn't bother you, then that might be your saving grace to kind of make sure that as you're coming into the finish, you release into the fingers, and then as you catch, you're only pulling those fingers forward.
And then someone that I don't trust told me to do plank pose for these joints.
That might put a little too much stress on them. I think I like the idea that you're keeping them in neutral when you're doing most activities. That's going to be the best position for them to recover, to feel better. Using the thumbs repetitively, like you said, is what causes the pain. So I would try to avoid that and see if you can get out of that pain cycle.
I'm supposed to do my exercises, and that's why I had the injection, because it was so painful to do the exercise. But now that now I think I can do my OT exercises.
Yeah, and they have you like doing like abductions and flexions and yeah.
What about lifting hooks, they have for barbell people? It's like a strap around here, and there's like a rigid hook on your hand.
They do have gloves. They're called assist gloves. Well, US Army was going to send me some. They're assist gloves, so your hand gets to assist. So it's for people who don't have grip or can't create the grip at the catch. It's like a glove that comes around and then straps underneath here, but it's also easy removal, like the sense so that if anything happens in the boat, you can take your hands off. That might be a good in between, something to kind of, yeah, I forget.
Because I would think it stabilizes your hand and take the pressure off.
Yep, and that's exactly what it does. It creates a grip on its own, and then you tighten it down. And yeah, I will send you a picture of them. haven't received mine, the ones that US Rowing was gonna send me. They use them a lot, for people who don't have the muscular ability to get on, like for para rowing. They use them to provide that grip, people who have amputations or missing fingers. So if you don't have the proper grip, say you're missing the middle three, this glove also allows you to use the oar handle too. And as soon as mine arrive, I will let you guys know, and then.
So assist grip specifically.
I just can't, I don't know if any of them are any of this, what you're talking about.
It's not like that, it's a kind of, it's a curve, it has like it's curved, and then the oar handle can fit right inside there, but then it's
So you
like.
slide it on the oar.
Yeah, you slide them off the oar, and you can, if you need to get on a boat, or hold the backside.
So specifically the rope.
Yeah, specifically for rowing. Yeah, but like I said, when I receive my gloves and I get all the information for them, I will definitely let you guys know. I may be able to talk to the person, I think it was Deb Arnell or Berger. Yes. Yeah, contact her because she said she had a box of them. We were at the para classifier event, and I was just like, oh, this is amazing. You know, someone who has a stroke who can't use their person anymore, like I can be able to get their hands on the oar handle. Yeah, send her a message because I think they're $80 a piece or something like that. But like I said, she said that she had a bunch.
Just spend your money.
It's called assist glove.
Yeah, it's like an assist. I can look up the exact name, but it was something like row assist, or I think it might be like a.
She'll know what we need.
she'll know what you're talking about.
Very cool.
Yeah,
Very nice stuff. So
it's great class, great, this is wonderful.
thank you guys so much for having me. And like I said, if anybody's looking for rowing physical therapy, and I'm out of a gym in Charlotte, like behind, where Charlotte Furniture is. There's some warehouses behind there.
Yes.
And they have a really wonderful CrossFit gym back there. Amazing people, great space, huge space. They've got about 8 ergs. They have a ski erg, so I've been learning how to ski erg, so which is amazing. And then they've got a couple of bikes. They've got the big setups for the cages, and then they've got kettlebells, and ropes that my kids have loved. Ropes from the ceiling, so they're trying to mess around with those. But it's a really nice gym. They hold classes throughout the week, and hopefully I'll be putting out a rowing class soon too. Just a general come out and exercise kind of class, not a team, not a got to show up or anything like that. Kind of like a drop-in style class. So once I get that all set, I'll let you guys know. And
Wonderful information.
Thank you.
love to have you guys out.
Absolutely fabulous.
Thanks so much.